it now requires, from a buyer perspective, to if you want to work with an agent when you buy a property, you have to sign either an exclusive buyer broker agreement or a showing agreement. So that basically outlines the obligations of the consumer to the agent and the agent to the consumer. So it makes it a lot more transparent as to how much the agent's getting paid, who they're getting compensated by, um, and the work that they do.
Welcome to the 12-Minute Talks podcast presented by Mom Life and Health Insurance Agency. Learn actionable insights from our guests in just 12 minutes. Each episode features business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry experts who share their experiences and strategies.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 12-Minute Talks podcast. I'm super excited to have with us today a local residential real estate advisor named Sebastian Garcia. He's going to talk about everything in his industry, changes, and how he helps consumers with this important topic of picking a home, right? Sebastian, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lorena, for the opportunity to share a little bit about my business. I'm super excited.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been a long time since I've had a realtor on the show. I want to say maybe like 2 years, and I know there's been a lot of changes in your industry. But before we get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate?
Sure. So it it uh, it really was one of those things where I kind of fell into the business. Born and raised in Miami, grew up in a real estate family, third generation. Real estate was not on my mind as a young kid. Um, you know, Funny enough, my grandfather back home in Cuba, he owned a hotel. He was in the hospitality business. Really just loved taking care of guests and making sure that everyone got what they wanted to eat and drink, etc. So as a young kid, having family parties, I was the one that would go around to everyone, hey, making sure they were having a good time. So that led me into the kitchen, learning how to cook from when I was probably 7, 8 years old. I really have a passion for hospitality, which is what led me to go to FIU, went into the hospitality school, study abroad, lived in China, came back, got into a management training program, realized that I didn't want to work holidays and nights the rest of my life. It's not very conducive to having a normal family life, wife, kids, etc. So I decided in my mid 20s to switch careers. Around that time, my uncle had passed away from cancer, and that's kind of really was the last straw for me. I had already gotten my real estate license, so I got into the business, not really knowing what to expect, right? Having heard many different things, went to go work for the nation's largest home builder, Lennar, and that's really where I cut my teeth. Where I learned the business, construction, marketing, sales. I still remember that first year. On my days off, I'd buy these little pastries and I go out to the job site and I give them to the subcontractors. And that's how I learned construction. So really learning the business from the ground up was really the only way for me. During that time, I went back to school. I got my master's degree in real estate, and all while working at the same time, and then joined Compass 3 years ago. So it's been a very rewarding experience. I've now been in the business for 12 years. But really it started out of interest later on in life. I always liked sales. For me, it was very competitive. I grew up playing competitive sports, so it seemed like a match made in heaven. Having that
Yeah,
competitiveness.
that's fantastic that you were able to transition from hospitality and that type of industry to then real estate, but still keep that competitive edge, right? Which, especially in real estate, it feels like you throw a rock and somebody there is real estate license, it seems. What would you say with so much competition, right? What sets you apart from other agents here in Miami that do the same thing as you?
That's a great question. You know, I think the most important thing as a real estate professional is showing or showcasing your value proposition, explaining to a consumer, a buyer, a seller, why they should work with you. For me, apart from my work ethic and the experience that I have, it's the educational component. I'm always looking to further my knowledge of the business, getting certifications, having, of course, my master's degree. So it's having both the field experience and the educational component. I feel like that's really lacking in our business. Not enough real estate professionals take the time to properly educate themselves and take additional courses. I think the idea that you take a 1 week course and you feel like you're equipped with all the necessary tools to help someone either buy or sell the most expensive asset they'll ever own is ludicrous. I think you really need, apart from that, a lot of training. I feel like you really should, like, appraisers, for example, they need, 1,000+ hours of apprenticeship under a state licensed appraiser. So something along those lines, I feel like is really important. So, having those two things, I feel are really are really important and really set you apart from the rest. Having the team behind you as well, having that support. Real estate is not a one man or one woman show anymore. It is really about a team effort. I'm part of a team and we work very collaboratively. So I think that's also key when it comes to getting deals across the finish line and really shooting ideas back and forth because I don't have all the answers at the end of the day, right? Um, you know, so I think that's really valuable.
So that makes total sense. I always say a lot of times people don't make decisions or they make wrong decisions because they're not properly informed. They don't have the education from a professional telling them what to do. And of course, besides taking additional courses, I would imagine you also learn a lot with experience, right? Like we all read the theory on that book, whatever you need to do to pass the test, but you won't really know until maybe you're talking to your first few clients, right? Okay, how does this really work? And especially working on a team, I think that's really helpful to doing a good job for that consumer that they're not just dependent on you, right? For all the answers. Let's switch gears a little bit because I have heard a lot about changes in your industry from the NAR lawsuit, right, that happened last year, and how does that protect consumers or agents? My industry is insurance, so we just hear what people say. Can you talk to us a little bit about those changes and what you see for the industry, as a whole? In your
Sure.
opinion, of course. Yeah.
Of course. Hey, listen, I have a lot to say about that. There's been it's been an interesting year so far. I mean, we're not even a year into the settlement of the lawsuit. They settled, or the changes of the lawsuit rather, which came about August of last year. Basically, for all the viewers out there, the short of it is it now requires, from a buyer perspective, to if you want to work with an agent when you buy a property, you have to sign either an exclusive buyer broker agreement or a showing agreement. So that basically outlines the obligations of the consumer to the agent and the agent to the consumer. So it makes it a lot more transparent as to how much the agent's getting paid, who they're getting compensated by, um, and the work that they do, right? So I feel like there was before it was not very clear, how that worked, right? So this, and then from a consumer standpoint, it really makes you think whether or not you are serious about working with that agent, right, and committing to that agent. I feel like people, as in general, the psychology of people, we have, excuse me, we have a aversion to commit to anyone other than our spouses and our kids, right? To have that exclusive commitment to somebody, right? So, I feel like that has brought out a lot of changes. And then from a seller standpoint, sellers are no longer required to compensate the buyer's agent, right? So I feel like that's opened up a can of worms in a sense because when I've gone since the lawsuit has been settled and I've gone on listing appointments and I've spoken with sellers, consumers today are a lot more educated and they're a lot more in the know than they were 10, 15 years ago. There's so much information on the internet, whether it's right or wrong. People read up on what's going on and they're constantly in tune. So I've had a lot of sellers say, well, I don't feel like I want to or need to compensate the buyer's agent. And I told them, look, you are well within your right not to do so. I said, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and tell you I still think it's a good idea to compensate a buyer's agent because this buyer or buyers that come and view your property, they have an exclusive or a showing agreement signed with their agent that if the uh, seller does not compensate the buyer's agent, then the buyer has to compensate their agent directly. So there are some buyers that may not be able to financially compensate their own agent. So if that listing is not offering buyer agent compensation, they may just say, hey, you know what? We don't want to see this house. So you may lose potential buyers as a result of not offering compensation. So I think it's very interesting. The whole root of this lawsuit started, it's not something that started yesterday. I mean, this goes all the way back to 2019. And believe it or not, it started in Missouri over a $300,000 listing. It wasn't a multi-million dollar listing in, Miami or LA or New York. This was a smaller listing and consumers got together. They felt like they were duped or they felt like they were coerced into paying commissions. They felt like brokers were price fixing. I, for one, even from when I started in the business, I've always said commissions are negotiable. And I always tell sellers that 100% they're negotiable. Here's why I feel like I'm worth a full fee, and I talk to them about the tools, not only that my team has, my brokerage has, our experience, our connections, our track record, the amount of homes that we've sold. I've done to date $350 million in transactions in my career, so I talk about all those things and how much of a value add they are. And I ask them, is that experience worth having in your corner, going to bat for you, looking out for your personal interests when it comes to buying or selling the most expensive asset you'll ever own? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I think, a lot of times people with changes in their industry are either they're upset, and it's like, well, there's a reason it's happening and you either adapt to it or you find something else to do. Like in our industry for like health insurance for the marketplace, now they require us to also sign for the client to sign documents saying they want us to be their agent. Why? Because there was a lot of people unfortunately doing things incorrectly, just switching people's plans, right? So yes, is it more work for us? Of course, but it also protects the consumer at the end of the day that they're working with who they want to work with. And so to me, I see this as something similar. And yes, of course, I think everybody should get compensated accordingly because we don't work for free, right? Like everybody has bills to pay at the end of the day, right? And so, Sebastian, how can somebody get a hold of you if they would like more information about your services?
So my cell phone is probably the best way to get a hold of me. By email, social media. and the website. One of the things that really drives a lot of business to me and our team is our website. It's really easy to remember. It's miamirealestate.com. So whenever you're looking for real estate in Miami, and you'll find Zillow, realtor.com, and then you'll find us. So there. And I also suggest, because I'm one of those people, I don't really like talking a lot about myself. I really like to let my clients do the speaking for me. So I encourage anyone that is thinking about working with me to please Google me. I have almost 60 5-star reviews from past clients. I feel like that is a good indication as to the kind of work that I produce and how I represent my clients.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, those Google reviews say a lot about somebody and how they work, right? And I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name's Lorena Tomasini, and I'm the owner of Mom Life and Health Insurance Agency, where we help families and businesses with their financial protection needs all done digitally. And Sebastian, I do have one last question for you. What would you say is a good resource, maybe for somebody looking at moving to Florida? We have a lot of people moving here lately. I don't know if that's still the trend, but for sure, for the past few years, that's been the case. What would you say is maybe a good resource they can check out to learn more about our state?
Sure. Um, I feel like, the Chamber of Commerce, you can check out our website. There's a wealth of information on there. Check out my social media. I have a relocation guide on there, which you can go through. And if you have any questions, I love nothing more than talking about my city. I love Miami. Of course, it's home, and there's so much to the city. No matter where your interest may lie, no matter what you're looking for, the lifestyle you're looking for, Miami has it all. So I feel like it's a very special corner of the map that we have here at home. So reach out to me. I really love when clients come in from out of town, and I'm able to take them, tour them throughout the city, and show them what Miami has to offer. I really take a lot of pride. So I feel like you can read a lot about it, but there's nothing like experiencing it firsthand.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for all this valuable information. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the 12-Minute Talks podcast, presented by Malm Life and Health Insurance Agency. If you enjoyed today's conversation, remember to share and subscribe. Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Remember to make it a great day.